What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies, and it is once again Monday, which means we are here for Mondays with Maximoff. Again, it is myself, Harrison from the Basement Binge, and Rob here to talk about WandaVision Episode 7, a show that just keeps moving forward, and for me gets better and better and better. So, Rob, Harrison, again, welcome back, guys. We're at another episode, and it's getting close to the end here.
It is. It's very exciting. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to talk about this. I just barely finished rewatching it, as I already told you guys. So obviously, I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I watched this in the middle of the day. My kids were home from school on break, and when I said to them, "Hey, do you guys want to watch WandaVision on lunch?" They were immediately jumping on board and saying, "Yeah." And I think one of them did say, "Well, shouldn't we wait for Mom?" And the other two just looked and said, "No, we're not waiting for Mom. We're just starting this." And, I know that's a serious faux pas in many households to go an episode ahead of a show you're all watching together. I know in some households that might even be considered grounds for divorce, but I certainly didn't. We didn't give anything away, and I certainly had no problem doing a rewatch with her because this is just it's really pulling you in deeper and deeper. And I compared it to my first time reading The Watchmen, and every page you turn and every issue you finish just pulled you more and more in. And as we go week to week, you can tell there's so many forces at work, and there's conspiracies at play, and there's things happening, and what you thought was going one direction kind of zigs, and all of a sudden there's this new element, and everything spins a different direction than you thought it was going in with this show. And it's really a shame that I don't really see a way they do a second season of this, and I'm not sure they ever intend to, but wow, what a great start to the MCU on Disney Plus. I mean, this is really I don't want to say it was a come out of nowhere hit, but I don't think that this was a show that everybody thought we would all be talking about in this way. I mean, this show is really dominating a lot of pop culture right now. There's certainly a lot of conversation around this on the internet, and this is like the dominant show that people are trying to figure out what's happening. And if you're not watching WandaVision, it's kind of hard to participate in pop culture right now, because this is really what people are gravitating to.
Yeah, I mean, I know that when I'm at work, there's a lot of conversation when we have time that if somebody hasn't watched it based on different shifts and stuff like that, it's you guys go to another room. Like, don't stand here and talk about it, because nobody wants to be spoiled by it. And it's about 4 or 5 people in the showroom that I work in that are watching this show out of my small little team of 8. And yeah, nobody wants to hear anything until they watch it. So it's like, oh God, I didn't get to watch it yet. So, Harrison, with only 3 episodes left, we're getting pretty close to the end here, which, for me is kind of sad, because we're not going to be doing this show anymore, but boy, it keeps ramping up, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember on Friday, you texted me when I was at work, and he sent like a GIF, like Harrison at the end of WandaVision. It was Thor saying, "I knew it," from Endgame. And it just, I mean, I knew it was Friday. I knew it was WandaVision. I was at work. I was like, I've got to go watch this. Like, my anxiety increased. Like, I went and took a bathroom break for 5 minutes and started. And I was like an unnecessary bathroom break, air quotes bathroom break. And I watched like 5 minutes. I was like, no, this is a bad idea. Like, I'm supposed to be working right now. But then I was able to take a break and watch it. But it's ramping up, and it's tons of fun.
Yeah. So, let's get right into it. Obviously, listeners, what we're going to do is we're going to transition here to the spoiler-free portion of this review to talk about our quick feelings about this episode and move on to spoilers. So, guys, I'll kick it off. Again, this episode for me, for the most part, there is about 97% that I love about this episode and 3% that I'm not a fan of, which we'll get to later. But once again, it just kicks everything up a notch. It turns it upside down for me in terms of, well, last week I thought I knew what was going on and it threw a curveball. This week I thought maybe I was getting a little bit back on track. There's a couple of curveballs that are thrown that I'm like, okay, well, good Lord, what does this mean? And a surprise ending. This is not a spoiler, really, because I'm not going to mention what happens, but it's the first post-credit scene in this show, which makes me think, okay, what do these characters, what are their actual motives, and what role do they have to play? So I love the episode. There's a small bit that I have a problem with it, but it certainly does not hinder my enjoyment for this episode, or my increasingly hard time to wait a week to get the next episode. So, Harrison, I'll let you go last. Rob, what are your thoughts, spoiler free, on this week's episode?
Spoiler free is tough because I just really want to get into what there is to go here. One of the things that I think I love about this show, and I think what really creates the tension around it, is the fact that Disney is releasing it week by week instead of dumping the whole thing on us, the way that several other streaming services, and I would say most streaming services do. They make us wait a whole week. And I think that that's really a great move. I think, Matt, you and I had talked about this a little bit with The Mandalorian, that it's really better than if they just kind of dump the whole thing on us, and you can just sit and watch literally the whole series in one sitting if you have the time to do it. I just think with the way that there's twists and turns throughout this series, if you could watch 2 episodes back to back, and I know they did that in the first week, they gave us episodes 1 and 2, but if you could watch just 2 of them back to back, 3 of them back to back, or the whole series, straightforward, I don't think it would have the tension and the build that what we're getting now. There's just, I love that every week we get paid off on a little thing from the previous week or from 2 weeks prior. There's a little payoff for this. There's a little bit of a, okay, I see what's happening now, or okay, that little thing has gone in motion now. And then when they resolve 2 or 3 other things, they give you like 5 other things that all of a sudden you have to consider and you have to start wondering about. And this episode probably gives us the most payoff on things that are actually happening since maybe the 4th week when the whole thing took place outside the Hex. And I have a lot of questions. I've definitely been wrong about certain things that I predicted, but one of the things that you absolutely must talk about with this show is just how fantastic the casting is. By and large, the principal characters are done so well. I just, as I'm looking through my notes, Catherine Hahn, she's great. Kat Dennings, she's great. Monica Rambeau, she's just fantastic. Like and certainly we've extolled the virtues of Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen throughout our recap show. But holy cow, it's just everybody they've brought into this series, with very, very few exceptions, is so fantastic and really draws you in to this mystery that we get week after week.
Yeah, very well put. Harrison, your thoughts, man?
Wow. How do I follow up that? But I agree. It's so interesting to like experience this so drawn out and so slow, but it's so much fun because the payoffs feel so rewarding, maybe just because they're so slow. And it's just awesome to like think what could be happening. I mean, we talk about this every podcast, how it's so fun to think about what could happen, but it's tons of fun because it's happening now. And I don't really know how to follow up after what Rob said, because he pretty much said it all really well. And if I tried to say it a different way, I'd just butcher it. But, I got to hand it down to the cast. I got to hand it down to the acting and just like just what they're doing with it. I think my brain is so conjumbled right now. I can't remember which one of you said this, but you were talking about how it's taken over pop culture. I think it was you, Matt. Like Maybe it was Rob. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's taken over pop culture in a way that none of us expected. Like when they were talking about the MCU going to Disney Plus, I figured like, they'll be good, but like I won't be missing out on much if I don't watch it, because they talked about it be connected to the rest of the movies. Holy smokes, you're missing out on like some of the best content in the MCU if you're missing out on WandaVision. And I had no idea I'd care for Wanda and Vision so much. I had no idea I'd care for the series. I had no idea that the series would be this good in the scope of the MCU, but also in like what it is as like a mock sitcom drama type thing. Like there's just so many things that just blow me away about it. And this episode continues with that. And it was just tons of fun. It was the first episode that I've rewatched because it was that good.
Yeah, Rob, one of the other things you said, and we're going to move forward here, is it's kind of hard to do a spoiler-free portion on this because as these episodes keep coming, it's hard to talk about an episode without just basically spilling the beans, so to speak, and talking about all of the little things that might mean nothing, might be something. What are the theories? What was this character doing? So, listeners, this is where if you haven't watched this episode and you don't want to hear spoilers, pause the episode, go watch this one. It's probably one that, again, kind of like last week, you could watch it twice because there's a lot going on. So we are going into spoiler territory. And starting with spoilers, the thing that I liked right off the bat is, one, there was an Office and a heavy dose of Modern Family. I love that show, actually. I always found that show very good as the influence for this week's episode. But one thing that I liked right off the bat was Wanda's vulnerability with really just telling the kids, look, I don't have any answers. And maybe that's okay. But I don't know what's going on. If your dad doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want to be here. I have to let him go to have him come back. She's kind of coming to grip with the fact that this is kind of falling apart, but she's very confused as to why it's falling apart because, well, she should control it. And I think from a certain standpoint, to a lot of viewers, that's probably really relatable, that sometimes you just don't understand why something is happening, but it is, and you can try and fight against it, or you can try and see where it goes, because sometimes the hardest thing to do is to just let it take its course, so to speak. So I really like seeing her vulnerable right off the bat. Harrison, I'll switch it over to you first. Where'd you start on this episode with her really just kind of letting things go, so to speak?
Oh man, I thought it was so, just especially this time when I rewatched it. So you get like the recap of previously on WandaVision, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like this is where we left off, and it picks up the pace, and then you get the epic Marvel Studios intro. Like who can't, you get excited during that. Like that is a what's the word I'm searching for? Like energizing. There we go. That's the word. It's an energizing theme song and the logo, and it's awesome. And then it cuts to Wanda laying in bed alone. And the first thing she does is reach over, and Vision's not there. And she's like, oh, like, wow, I really care about these two characters. And then to like see how Wanda falls apart emotionally, how difficult of a time she's having with this, and like the reality of her being a parent. It was fun in the way that it like totally fit the era of like TV that it was mocking, but it also fits the story for Wanda and Vision really, really well. And I think it's so clever. I think it's so well done. But it also like makes me wonder so much about the Hex and like so many things like Wanda and Agnes and different realities and everything that the show's about. Of course, none of that I really have any answers to, but it's fun how like watching something that's so well crafted that is able to convey all those things at the same time. Like we're making fun of like a style of TV by making that style of TV super well. We're also having a TV show for characters that we're telling really well. And we're also like creating insights and questions and hints at a grander multiverse. Like that's just so impressive that it does all that at once.
Yeah, Rob, what are your feelings on, Wanda's mental state in this episode? Oh, Rob, did we lose you?
Oh, wait. Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. I think somebody cut out. Do you still got me?
Yep, we got you.
Hello? Matt?
Hello.
Oh, no. Okay, cool. So yes, so it was very interesting to me. One of the first things I had written down and had noticed was that, Wanda is obviously very stressed about this reality that she created specifically because the real reality was causing her post-traumatic stress. And it was kind of like this poor woman. She just can't simply get away, even when she creates this idyllic world for her to live in, whether or not she herself created it, but she certainly has influence on it and a significant amount of influence, as we'll talk about soon, I'm sure. Even within that, she still can't escape the stresses of normal life. She thought that by having a husband and children and a cul-de-sac style, suburban neighborhood life, that everything would be hunky dory and fine, and she could escape there. And somebody forgot to tell her that being a parent is hard. It's not easy. I kind of love when she was like, "Boys, I don't really know," and I'm like, I feel you. I was like, I was like, I feel represented here. I understand this. Like, it was super awesome. I certainly was wrong about the big twist that came later, but there's certain other things that I kind of felt like little payoffs here and there. But seeing the circus, that was super fun. We didn't get Kat Dennings in the yellow, two broke girls kind of outfit that I was kind of hoping for, knowing that this was going to move into the 2000s. But so many fun things that they did here. Just more questions too. Like if Vision has the ability to pull people out of the fake reality into the real world, as we've seen him do several times, I couldn't help but wonder, okay, so he pulls Darcy out of the trance where she's the escape artist. And that whole bit was fantastic, by the way. Like, that just, it was so funny when she pretended like he was coming on to her, and just, it was great. But my question was, okay, so these are all sword agents for the most part that are in this circus. Why doesn't he just like unfreeze all of them? And now he's got a whole army if he needs it to break down doors and figure out what's really going on. Like, that was one of the few kind of like plot holes that I didn't really have an answer for.
Yeah, I think my interpretation of that was when he sees Darcy, he understands, he connects with her because she was really the only one. He comes outside of the hex that was sympathetic to him. Everybody else was just kind of standing there, and whether or not he knows that the people who are now part of the circus were sword agents, I think it's because he recognized her as somebody that tried to help him, so he was trying to get answers. So maybe that's not the reason, and maybe it is kind of like wouldn't he just free these people? But also, too, he's seen kind of what happens when he zaps people out of that reality and they freak out. So he puts them, we saw that with Norm, where he just starts losing his mind about, I have to have my cell phone, I have to call my wife. So he might not want to, until he fully understands what's going on and how to help these people, he might not want to break them out of this because it does more damage right now than them being basically oblivious to this while they're under that control. That's just my part of it. And maybe I'm 100% wrong, but that was one thing. It was funny. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more. I was kind of hoping for like not a whole episode of that, but some sort of act from the circus in this episode. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't get that. But again, the interaction when they were right there setting things up was great. Everybody here that are the main characters, I'm just amazed at the chemistry that they've all brought to the screen for people who have not had screen time together. I mean, really, now with the show, okay, but before WandaVision, the only two people that really were on screen together were Wanda and Vision. Everybody else has just been brought into this, but man, it's nobody to me has missed a step. It's just amazing how well everybody gels together, no matter who they're on screen with. And again, I think we can't say enough about this cast. Harrison, any further thoughts on the circus scene and Wanda and Darcy kind of going over what the heck is happening?
Yeah, I thought this isn't so much the circus scene, but just the two of them together later when they're driving. I think it's so interesting to see Vision have such an existential crisis. Like, clearly, I talked about this before, that Vision, in the actions he's taking to like save Westview, so to speak, to just put it simply, proves why Vision was worthy of holding Mjolnir. But he doesn't know who he is. Like, he's understanding history without understanding himself. And that is, I don't even understand that, but like that would be really difficult to like define who you are and figure out your existence. That's got to be very, very weird for him, especially as he breaks more and more away from Wanda's control. Because I think that if I look back at the other episodes, maybe Vision felt like he was fitting in as Wanda's husband in a sitcom, is because that was what Wanda was portraying to him. And now that he's realizing that that's wrong, in addition to having to like confront the reality that Wanda has created an alternate reality, he also has to confront the reality that he doesn't know who he is. And that, I just think that's so interesting and super fun to explore. But I did think that the entire circus scene was hilarious, especially with Darcy thinking that Vision is coming on to her. I was laughing so hard. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I did find that funny, especially too. She's like, okay, but I'm getting the lobster.
Yeah, that was so great.
I was like, I would too. I'd be like, yeah, I'm getting lobster. But Harrison, you're talking about Vision, and one thing that is brought up a lot, and more so than any movie in between its release to now, there are so many references to Age of Ultron, which, Rob, you and I, when we did our MCU Infinity Saga reviews, we ranked Ultron pretty low. Harrison, I think you had Ultron higher than us, but for the most part, that's a movie that kind of goes forgotten, so to speak.
Right.
But we're getting more and more references to Age of Ultron. Whenever I end this, whenever I end the show, when it's done and I'm watching it on Disney Plus, it always goes to, because you watch WandaVision, and the thing that pops up is Age of Ultron. And again, maybe that's just a coincidence, but the more and more that they mention it, and based on some IMDb casting reports, and them experimenting on Vision, I have a thought that they are trying to bring back Ultron. And I'm just kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are on, again, we talked about it last week, but hearing Hayward talk, again, I am convinced that he is using, or he was trying to use, Vision as a weapon, and that's maybe why Wanda took him in the first place, because you can tell he does not have good intentions, so to speak. But especially with him saying, I was created, Vision mentions that he was supposed to be like the last form of Ultron. It feels like he's back to that original form where he was just finding out about what he was supposed to be and how he was going to, understand that he didn't want to be Ultron. He wanted to choose a different path. So, Rob, I'll let you go first. What do you think Hayward's end game is here? Because I think that's kind of alluded to in this episode, not so much straight on, but he definitely has a plan.
Yeah, and you mentioned that when you're done with the episode, Disney Plus recommends Age of Ultron. It does the exact same thing for me, and I think it probably has every week so far. And it's kind of like, no, Disney Plus, I will not watch that turd pile of a movie. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you recommend it, I'm not doing it. Like, it's not good. Like, but as we go further and further into this, there's like little nods and mentions to things that it's been a long time since I've watched that film. It's been even longer since I've enjoyed it. And it almost makes me kind of want to go back and rewatch it a little bit, even though I know it's not good. But I wonder if there's aspects of this I would enjoy more if I would have seen that a little more recently. Oddly enough, it seems like WandaVision is intent on trying to make us rewatch the worst parts of the MCU. There's a reference later to something in Thor: The Dark World that it's kind of not necessarily a blink and you'll miss it, but it's not referenced very deeply. And certainly I don't expect most people listening to this have seen Thor: The Dark World in a long time, or maybe even ever. And by the way, you're not missing anything. It's crap. But yeah, Hayward is he's doing something with Vision. And as we've talked about in previous weeks, think about a world where the snap did happen. Just thinking about what happened in our world when something like 9/11 happened and what the response was to that, things changed. Things changed very quickly because people want to be safe. People want to feel safe. And when the general public wants to feel safe, they will greenlight their government to do basically whatever they want to do. And that includes restarting the Ultron program, potentially. And we had talked about it before, and when we saw the security cam footage of Wanda breaking into where Vision was being held, it definitely didn't look to me like he was being mourned or he was being given a final resting place. It definitely looked like he was hooked up to stuff, and there was wires and there were circuits going and there was all kinds of stuff going. They were clearly doing something to him. And then this week, we are absolutely led to believe that they were trying to get Vision back online in some way, or possibly, reverse engineer something using him. Certainly, if you had a functioning Ultron that wasn't hell-bent on destroying all of humanity, the next time a Thanos-level threat comes along, you'd kind of want that if you could have it, I think. Certainly knowing how mercurial some of your heroes are, does anybody really want to count on Captain Marvel? I mean, she's got space stuff to worry about. Certainly Tony Stark is a wild card, when he was alive in this universe. Captain America basically became a criminal in the effort to do what he thought was right. And some of these other players, the Hulk, do you really trust the Hulk? So if you could create a robot that did exactly what you wanted it to do, the next time you have something like Thanos come along, you'd feel a little bit safer. And it seems like maybe that's the direction they were going. And like I've said before, I can't say I necessarily think that S.W.O.R.D. are the bad guys here for trying to do it.
Yeah, Harrison, what are your thoughts? Because based on other shows that you've done and things like that, like you said, you love to theorize and what's going on. So what are your thoughts on Hayward's plan and what's the end goal for Vision? Because it seems like there's an end goal for him.
Right. Yeah. There's one line that I wrote down in my notes that I was waiting for on a rewatch, that on the rewatch, Hayward says to, I don't know, it's one of his people he's commanding.
One of his goons.
He says, like, get ready, we launch today. What are they launching? We don't see any, like, that's the last time we see him in the episode, is he says we launched today. Right. What are they launching? Clearly he's focused on the Hex. And I think that S.W.O.R.D's involvement in this is Vision. It's clear. They keep bringing that up with the Cataract program or whatever it's called. So as far as Ultron goes, I definitely think that that's what's going on. That to some extent, whether you want to call it Ultron or Vision or whatever, Synthezoid 2.0, whatever you want to call it, they're doing something to bring a sentient weapon back for all of the reasons that you guys have already said. And I think, say what you will about Age of Ultron, if we could get James Spader back as Ultron, I would not complain. He is the best part of that entire movie. And I think that he, as an actor, and Ultron as a character were both completely underused. Ultron is a great villain in the comics. He's very threatening. And that'd be cool to get him back. I don't know if we will. There's part of me that really hopes we do to some extent, but also hopes we don't, because if he does come back, I think he's going to be the threatening Ultron that he is in the comics, which it kind of scares me. But yeah, I definitely think that it's going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, James Spader is credited in WandaVision. So we have not seen him yet, and we have episodes 7, 8, and 9. Well, I shouldn't say we haven't seen him. We haven't heard him yet. So it leads me to believe that something is happening there. Moving on to, one part that was a little bit of a letdown to me, in the sense of, it seemed like we were going to get a payoff when we didn't on this one. One of the big things that kept getting brought up from Monica was, I have a friend. I have an engineer. They're going to get me back into the Hex. And we were on the path. We find out Monica and Jimmy are okay. They're outside of the Hex, and they're going to meet this friend of hers who's going to get them back into, get her back into the Hex. And when we get to that scene, it's just this military friend who doesn't seem all that important. Now, there was some dialogue that, this is what we brought for you, that could still be, we don't know who made this equipment and who figured that, this would work to get her back into the Hex. So there's still something there, because it seemed like, it was oddly specific to keep saying, I have a friend who's an engineer, that we were going to get maybe just a name drop. And we didn't get that, but there was a lot that I liked about that scene that leads into her getting into the Hex. You see her determination, you see her character. The nod to her comic book costume was really cool. You get some voice cameos from Nick Fury and Carol Danvers when she is trying to break through the Hex on her own. So I thought it was a very good scene. It certainly seemed to show her transition into her superhero counterpart. So for the most part, I thoroughly enjoyed her showcasing the strength to just say, I need to do this. I'm going to go help Wanda, and, the heck with the repercussions, because Darcy certainly warned her she couldn't go back through the Hex. So again, I thought it showed her in a very strong light. I was just a little, I thought we'd get a little bit more from who this person was. But Harrison, I'll revert to you first. What are your thoughts on that?
Pretty much the exact same. When that military person, I have her name written down. When Major Goodner shows up.
Not Reed Richards.
Yeah, I was like, who is this, and why isn't it Reed Richards? Was pretty much my thought. And then, of course, the scene moves on, and some pretty awesome stuff happens, and it's so easy to forget about that because of what follows. But in that moment, I just remember being like, wait, what? This is supposed to be the engineer. And then, I kept rewinding it. Like, did she say that this was the engineer? Did she say that this wasn't the engineer? Like, what about the engineer? Is this the engineer? Like, I needed confirmation. And it's just, all the words spoken about this Major Goodner are so loose that it's like, okay, this could be the engineer, or this could just be somebody who brings the equipment that the engineer provided. And I have no idea. That's my hope, that the engineer who provided it is Reed Richards. It is a spacecraft vehicle. Is their strongest space exploration vehicle that she drives. But I have no idea. That did bother me, though.
Yeah, that is a line that they, again, it feels like it was dropped deliberately. This is our space, which again was like, okay, maybe we'll get a name drop in a later episode, because they kind of seem to leave it open-ended that this is somebody who's maybe just dropping off the product, so to speak. Like, this was your Uber Eats driver. So, Rob, what are your
Here's
thoughts?
A big truck.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I felt very similar to what you guys are talking about. I was, it seemed like this would have been a payoff of somebody else. Certainly, we've seen a lot of that kind of thing throughout the show. I was very confused why she was putting on a spacesuit and getting in a space truck to go on Earth into, into the Hex. It kind of felt like, well, you didn't need that last time you went in. So what's the point of this? Like, what do you think this was going to? I didn't really understand it because she just ended up walking through it anyways. And the one thing that I guess maybe my biggest beef with this episode was kind of how they do Monica, becoming Spectrum. Her superhero origin is basically just she walked through the Hex 3 times. So does that mean everybody who goes through the Hex is now going to have superpowers if they do it enough times? I didn't love that, unless what they do is they explain it away that because she was in space so much and exposed to all this other cosmic radiation, then it interfered with her bloodstream and boom, okay, now only she gets powers this way. That'll be kind of interesting to see how they do it. But I loved Monica's determination to try to reach Wanda, to try to get to her, to try to reason with her. We certainly get the super cool, like, superhero landing when she gets blasted in the air and lands, fist straight down on the ground, one knee down. I mean, who doesn't love a good superhero landing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot there. So it is a minor thing about the payoff, but there was some really good content there. And one other thing, and this is just my other little piece of this episode that I don't like, so I'll get this out of the way and get your guys' thoughts on it, it seemed weird. And again, I know there was still sitcom elements to this episode, but when Vision and Darcy are talking and he's becoming more and more aware of what's going on, he certainly says, boy, it seems like Wanda is trying to stop me. Like, it seems like Wanda's trying to impede my progress home. It felt out of place for him to stop and talk to the camera, especially given the fact that he just, has this epiphany of like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? And just flies out of the truck that they're using to drive back to Wanda's home. It felt more of an audience moment instead of natural. And that's one thing that in, movies and things like that, it draws me away from it when it's void of actual logic and it's just made to be for the audience, so to speak. It was a little bit too on the nose for me and didn't really make sense that in this moment, Vision was stopping and talking to the camera. Maybe that was me, but Rob, I'll ask you first. What were your thoughts on him just kind of taking his time and then finally coming to the realization like, I can just get there?
Yeah, the first time I saw it, I was like, dude, you fly and you phase through objects. Like, what are you doing? Like, what? Like, seriously, why is this a thing? And as he kind of was talking to the camera and doing sort of those cutaways, very much in line with the sitcoms that inspired this week's episode. I on my rewatch, I kind of just excused it as, their reality is governed by the rules of those sitcoms, and that's what happens in them. This is clearly the B plot, that he's trying to get home because his wife's mad at him, and, they have to have this conversation, and they just keep having hurdle after hurdle get in their way. That's how the B plot of that sitcom was supposed to go until he just kind of snapped out of his own realization. It did bother me kind of the first time through, but on the second time through, I guess I was more willing to excuse it.
Gotcha. Harrison, you mentioned at the top of this episode, you finished up a rewatch here before we went live, so to speak. What were your thoughts on that part of this episode?
So the first time watching it, I just thought it was funny. Like, oh, this is really funny. Especially when he realized, like, why am I talking to you? And gets up. Like, I thought that was hilarious. But then as I thought about the episode and as I was rewatching it and I knew that was coming, I was like, this is kind of weird. And I thought about it. I was like, why is he? Like, this is kind of dumb. Why would he stop, set up all this camera equipment? Why is he following the laws of the sitcom?
When he knows exactly
what's happening. Yeah. So it felt weird. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, wait, this is like, especially with knowing that Agnes is the one behind the camera, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like Agnes clearly has some control over this sitcom reality, and she can inflict those laws on whoever she wants. And I think that it was more Agnes, causing the construction and the kids and the red lights and all the things that were slowing them down. I think that was Agnes and not Wanda that was causing that. And so I also think that this was just another ploy of Agnes to get what she wants by making them succumb to the laws of this reality that they've created. But Vision has the mentality to be able to break away from it eventually, just like he did through this series. And so I through thinking about how weird it was, I found out how fitting it was, which is weird. But yeah, that's how I feel about it.
No, I think that I think that's a good, valid point. And I mean, heck, you lobbed it up. Time to just hit that softball pitch. The big reveal this week is, Harrison, you talked about it, and yeah, we've got someone pulling the strings here. And it was great. I love the theme song that was accompanied with it.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I gotta say, the only part, and I won't say the word that I used, but she comes out with the line, and I killed Sparky, and I was like, "You little like," like I was like, "That's not cool that you admitted that you killed the dog." But her evil,
kill anybody else you want, just not the dog.
Right? Exactly. Like her
John
evil
Wick
cackle. Right? I know. Good Lord. Her evil laugh in that moment. Boy, I was a fan of her before, but the reveal and how it came to be, and she played a menacing touch to it as well. That I kind of went, again, knowing her backstory from the comics, but this is the first time you see it on screen. Like, ooh, yeah, she's got. She's a force to be reckoned with here. So I just thought they nailed the reveal. As much as Harrison, you had talked about it, I'm curious to get your thoughts first, because you had been talking about this the most out of the three of us. Were you still like pumped by it, even though you kind of were expecting it to happen? Like, how did that hit for you?
Yeah, I was so excited when she takes Billy and Tommy over to her house. I was like, it's gonna happen. I was so excited. And then especially when what was I saying? When Billy is like, it's quiet in here. I was like, it's really gonna happen this episode. Like so when she takes him over to her house, I was like, I was right. Like, she's without a doubt Agatha Harkonnen. But it's probably going to be revealed at a later episode. But then when Billy is like, you're really quiet on the inside, I got even more excited, because I was like, it's going to be revealed this episode. And it was just so fun to see it happening, especially because of Catherine Hahn and that music behind the scenes type thing. Like that, the way it was done was beyond anything I could have imagined or expected, and made it so much better. Because it would have just been dumb if she was like, I'm Agatha Harkonnen, nice to meet you, and like that was it. But to like make it so like over the top, and just the characterization was just tons of fun, and it was exciting, it was fulfilling, and also extremely intriguing. I have a lot more to say about that, especially with the dog thing that you talked about, but I'll save that for later. But yeah, when the reveal happened, when Wanda was walking out in the basement, I was just getting so excited. And Catherine Hahn is, she's great. She makes that role so much fun.
Yeah, Rob, I wasn't quite sure we were going to get it this episode until, I did notice when Wanda comes in, I was like, where the heck are the twins? And I was like, okay, like, oh God, we're going to end, and it's going to be, please stand by. And it's like, oh my God, we're going to have to wait. But as soon as she said, oh, I think it was maybe they're in the basement, or however she actually delivered that line, I was like, Harrison, I was like, oh my God, like, okay, we're getting this reveal right now before this episode ends. How was that execution for you?
I'm going to echo a lot of what Harrison said. I loved how they did it. I love that they did a whole like sideshow. It's Agatha all along, almost like it's a spinoff of
Right.
WandaVision is really how it was presented. And it was great. You know, it showed the flashback to her controlling things here and there. You know, listeners will remember that I've been firmly on team. I don't think that Agnes actually is Agatha Harkness. I realized as soon as whichever one of the twins grows up to become Wiccan, who has magic powers as well, as soon as he said, "You're quiet on the inside," I went, "Oh, I'm wrong. Yep, Harrison nailed it. I am wrong. This is clearly what's happening here." I knew right away. I whiffed on that one. Um, and then you know when she gets there and sees like the half-eaten kind of like peanut butter and jelly and asks where the twins were, and she goes down in the basement. I was just really hoping that the kids weren't stuck in like gingerbread houses or something like that, or something like really creepy and weird. But what we got was really creepy and really scary, and I loved how they approached it. You know, I've said all along, I didn't think necessarily that Disney and Marvel were going to go into kind of the supernatural. And then once we confirmed, okay, this is Agatha, and we've had the clues that perhaps Mephisto is involved, and we know Mephisto in the comics is aligned with Agatha. I started thinking about how we've been told there's a direct link between this show, Doctor Strange 2, and Spider-Man 3, and those are, you know, they all deal with kind of this multiverse, and they all deal with some of these similar kinds of ideas. And it got me into thinking about how the second MCU Spider-Man film ends with JJJ revealing to the whole world Spider-Man's true identity. um, and for those of you who aren't familiar, go check out Brand New Day is the name of the story. And it's where Peter Parker basically makes a deal with the devil, with Mephisto, to undo everybody knowing his identity through the events of the original Civil War. But in exchange, he and MJ are no longer married. They're no longer a couple. There's some other things that get undone by it. I'm kind of wondering, as I hypothesize about what we might get if Mephisto is actually involved, and if we get an element of him being involved in the third Spider-Man MCU film, undoing Peter Parker's reveal to the world as Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly some objects down in the basement that could certainly still point to, you know, him being part of this universe. I think Harrison is still onto something that we will not see him for a while. We might get some clues that he is a part of this, but I definitely think it is a slow burn, so to speak. You know, she mentions her husband again, who we have not seen. So who is this guy? In what does he represent? Because why haven't we seen him inside the hex? But I definitely think there's something there because he is so closely tied to Wanda, to Doctor Strange, to Spider-Man. And I know it's a shared universe and it seems more and more like this Sony deal, and this is going outside to another movie. You know, that Sony and Marvel are really truly teaming up now because I've heard rumors that with Venom 2 that Tom Holland has been on set for that. We certainly during the Morbius trailer saw Sam Raimi's Spider-Man costume inside that movie, which I thought was weird, but it lends credence to this whole multiverse theory. And then at the end of that trailer, you get Michael Keaton. So if Sony and Marvel are really teaming up and Marvel has, you know, a stake in Morbius and everything like that, obviously they're not afraid to go, I can't say off the rails, but they're not afraid to go out of the box here with what characters they're willing to bring in. I mean, we're getting, you know, Moon Knight, we're getting the Eternals, we're like, there's so many things that are happening where when you just kind of put it into that same perspective, having the devil as part of this universe or some form of him doesn't seem as far-fetched when you start to think of how many things they're actually incorporating into this MCU. So I definitely think we are going to see him in some way, shape, or form, and he's going to have an impact on the events of what is almost, if you count WandaVision as a movie with all of these episodes, it's almost like WandaVision, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange 2 are a trilogy. So I think he has some play in that. Harrison, you said you had some more thoughts on Agatha, and I don't think there's not a reason why we can't hear some more of those now.
Okay, yeah. It actually has to do with the line that you mentioned when you said that she's like, and I killed the dog, and that's where the episode ends. Like, especially in pop culture, like recent pop culture, if there's ever a way you want to make a villain evil, have them kill an innocent animal. Like, that's so horrible to say out loud and have my neighbors hear. But like, that's just in film, in TV. If you want to make someone evil, that's how you do it. But to have her earlier say that her husband says she sugarcoats things, just to, a little while later have her say that she killed a dog, like, that's not really sugarcoating, which makes me think that, like, her husband is a lot worse than her, which of course is Mephisto. And I'm still standing by my theory that I don't think we're going to get like a grand reveal of who he is and that it's Mephisto this episode or this series. I think, like we're talking about right now, the groundwork is definitely there. I'm hoping that Evan Peters is Mephisto, like, just in the future of the MCU, just because Evan Peters, he's awesome. He's so great, and I think he'd be so fun as Mephisto. But I do think that what you guys are saying in the Multiverse of Madness, which I have more to talk about as well with WandaVision and something that happened in it, and also Spider-Man 3 with what Rob talked about with the comic line with what happened after Civil War. Like, those are all things that I've thought about. I'm like, okay, yeah, like, this is happening. I really did doubt it when, even though I was totally banking on the idea of Agatha Harkness, I doubted on Mephisto. I was like, no, like, that's kind of intense for Marvel. Like, that's a little out there. And I think with Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness being a kind of horror, scary type film, I think that it's very fitting for that to be him to be an overarching involvement, especially with things like Morbius and Blade. Now that I think about that, that'd be cool if Morbius is connected to Blade, just because of the whole vampire thing, and if they were connected to Mephisto. Now I'm just getting all these ideas from what you guys have been saying, and I think that Mephisto really is going to be a central villain in the multiverse, which I think is the next big phase of the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, I love to get your thoughts on this. And before, you go into yours, one thing too is, and Rob, I think you've seen these movies and you certainly know of this guy. And Harrison, you're going to know of him too, but some of the movies that I'm going to mention, I don't think you've seen based on what I know some of your preferences are for movies and what they aren't. But I think it's not too much to I think it would be too much to overlook the fact of who is directing Doctor Strange 2.
Right.
And that's Sam Raimi, who has done The Evil Dead. And if this is supposed to be somewhat of a horror take, again, maybe it's just a coincidence, but they brought this guy on for a reason, I think. And if they're going to try and incorporate some form of the devil, and who knows, maybe he has a Dormammu-like scene where you don't fully see him. But there might be a reason why they picked this guy to helm this movie. Rob, what are your thoughts on, some of the things that Harrison said, or, anything with this going forward?
I think the Infinity Saga was truly unique for any more ways than you could ever possibly sit down and truly name. But to have it be kind of 23 films that are really telling one story or leading to the telling of one story, that being basically the events of Infinity War and Endgame being kind of the two pivotal films that really do tell that story. I don't know that that's duplicatable. And I even mean that in the context of the future phases of the MCU. I think there's just going to be, they're going to continue to introduce us to new characters and things like that. They're going to continue to introduce new ideas, new films, new bad guys. We know we're going to get Fantastic Four. There's certainly some rumors out there that I'd like to talk about in a little bit. We assume that they can't keep the X-Men on the shelf forever. But I kind of think that what we'll see in the MCU next is not necessarily one overarching bad guy per se that takes 23 films to build. I think what you might see is teams and characters kind of, staying in their lane. And what I mean is, like in the comics, the X-Men fight mutants mostly. Captain America mostly punches Nazis. Tony Stark fights like technological based villains. The Hulk takes on Abomination and Wendigo and Hulk sized characters. Captain Marvel's fighting space villains and things like that. Like certainly Doctor Strange deals with mystical. The characters kind of stay in their lane. Then they get together for the big team ups and the crossovers that happen in the summertime. But for the most part, they take on their own villains. I sort of believe we'll see that in the future of the MCU, where you see Doctor Strange contribute in other ways. You'll certainly see him appear in other films and certainly big Avengers films. But I think you'll see mostly smaller stories, smaller scale, big bads that aren't necessarily a Thanos level threat, or they might be that level of threat, but they're taken care of in one or two films, not necessarily massive amounts of films. And it kind of lines up with how they do it in the comics. And I think we'll see that going forward.
If it's okay if I can jump in, Matt,
Absolutely.
I just want to continue off with what Rob said. Something that I always keep my eye on is what Kevin Feige says, because the success of the MCU is a huge result of Kevin Feige. Like, of course, every creative individual involved in it is it's their result. But the biggest part that it was able to lead to something as big as Endgame is Kevin Feige's producing ability and the way that he has his finger on the pulse. He knows what pop culture wants when it wants it. And of course, he kind of tells us what we want, but it's not just that like he says and we follow. There's like a ebb and flow type of thing. I think that what has allowed them to be so successful is understanding what pop culture is ready for. And I think what pop culture is ready for, so to speak, is definitely the multiverse. It seems like, especially in comic book movie fandom, that seems to be everybody's next idea is what's going to be happening is some extent of the multiverse in both the DC films and Marvel films. But I also think that it's really what Rob said is trying to duplicate something like Endgame and Infinity War would be useless. One, nothing would probably be able to compare. Two, that's a ton of work that a lot of people probably aren't in for anymore. People had their end game and they're done, type of thing. You look at the reader, for example, to compare to comics, you look at the people who love Civil War versus the people who love Civil War 2, type of thing. And I think that it's going to be a scenario where, just like Rob said, it's those. Maybe we'll get, like, of course, everything's going to be intertwined, but the big bad may be interlinked over 3 films. Like we're talking about Mephisto. Maybe that's WandaVision, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange. And then maybe what happens with Falcon and the Winter Soldier has to do with, I don't know, Black Panther 2. And Ant-Man and the Wasp has to do with Fantastic Four, and so on and so forth. I'm just throwing out ideas here. I think that that's really what it's going to be like, which is so exciting because it means that there's like that's such a big sandbox to play in. But it's also like it's sad to see that the times are changing. I'm getting like totally out in the weeds here. I apologize. I'm just kind of like thinking out loud. But back to WandaVision, it's interesting to see how well like everything's laying the groundwork now. Like, yeah. I'm sorry. I spoke too much and now my brain turned off after all that, but it's just exciting to see what's happening.
Yeah. I think one other thing to touch on here, and, it's all good points because, it doesn't. Who knows where this is going? We don't necessarily have a roadmap per se. Like we know what movies we're getting, but the stories can go off in so many different directions. But you mentioned Evan Peters, and this is the first time that we get an end credit scene. It's it was kind of familiar to be like oh, this kind of ties back into the MCU that we know, with end credit scenes where Monica at one point in this, and we had skipped this part, so to speak. She confronts Wanda, kind of gets her to open up a little bit, when it looked like Wanda was maybe just going to, take her out, so to speak. And who knows if that would have worked based on what happened to Monica and her powers. But at the end here, she goes to try and find Wanda and ends up looking down in the basement, and you get Evan Peters at the end showing up, who appears different than he did when we last saw him, and just says, Snooper's going to snoop, huh? And that's episode cuts again. Again, Harrison, I am probably positive you haven't seen it. Rob, I don't know if you have, but if he was going to play a villain, look no further than American Horror Story, and he's fantastic. I think he is a very, very underrated actor. And if people only know him from the X-Men movies, you're missing out, because he is extremely talented. And if he needs to play a villain, I think he can very, very much pull it off. Rob, what are your thoughts on, who he actually is now? Because it's clear that we know who brought him here.
Yeah. It's definitely Agatha, that's brought him into this world, that pulled him from wherever he is, be it that, this world prime, the 616 universe, so to speak, or did she pull the X-Men version of Pietro and he's under her control? I think both of those things are in play. But something that I've been thinking about this week, in terms of how this is going to play out, is this Pietro a fake, a phony? Is he pulled from a different multiverse? Is he just some random townsperson that she transformed into a Quicksilver-like character just to throw all of us off? And Marvel's just kind of messing with us. All this week, we've been seeing lots of casting rumors surrounding Jennifer Lawrence being Sue Storm for the Fantastic Four. And as I was thinking about it, first of all, I was like, "Oh wow, that's cool. I like that. That seems great." I mean, it's certainly as bad as the Fantastic Four movies have been. You put like a big movie star in it, like you can't get a whole lot bigger than Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, she's been in some multi-billion-dollar kind of films, so great. And then it occurs to me, okay, so if she's in the MCU as Sue Storm in the Fantastic Four, then that pretty much guarantees we don't get a full X-Men crossover from the Fox universe, because it's unlikely that they will pull the sort of modern day characters in. They would probably give us the cast that was most recently seen in those abomination of a film, of Dark Phoenix and Age of Apocalypse, which is not good. Don't listen to Matt; he's wrong on that, and that's just, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion, but Matt's wrong on Age of Apocalypse being anything other than crap. But I think it's unlikely that that the X-Men are going to fully cross over if they're seriously considering this. And I got to imagine, where there's smoke, there's fire. So it's hard for me to, so I use that information to lead me to believe that this Pietro is not the one from the Fox universe.
Yeah. Harrison, some more thoughts on where we're going with him. I know you kind of mentioned it, but what do you think your overall the game plan is for him?
Yeah, there's one thing that I just can't forget. Like I said, going back to Kevin Feige, I read so many things that he says, interviews, and I remember probably just last year, maybe it was 2019, I don't remember. people were asking him about X-Men. Then when are the X-Men coming to the MCU? And he said something along the lines of, "We're not in a rush to bring the X-Men back," which is weird because I think that, to comment on what I said before, with his finger on the pulse of pop culture, the three of us in this conversation are more than excited for the X-Men. But I think the general consensus, average moviegoer, big picture type stuff, they're kind of worn out of the X-Men because most of them feel like Rob does about the recent X-Men films. So I think that Kevin Feige, in his multi-expansive mind that he has to plan things out to incredible extent, probably has X-Men planned, probably not anytime soon, which is a bummer because I think that cast could be used really good. So on to Evan Peters. I think that he is going to be a villain. I think there's a part of that that's just like my hope for him. There's this one scene, and I don't know why my brain remembers this scene, where he's like looking at Wanda and he's got like his tongue over his lower lip and just kind of like holds this look at her. And that image is frozen in my head. I don't know why. And it just tells me that he needs to be a villain. That could be just completely wrong. It's just what my brain wants. But I just think that that's going to be the case. I think that saying, oh, we've got a multiverse, and out of nowhere, out of the multiverse comes the X-Men, feels kind of cheap. Like it like that'd be fun because I love the X-Men and it'd be cool to get them. But for how much detail has been put into this perfectly crafted MCU, that feels kind of cheap. And so I don't think that it's going to be something that's going to happen very quickly. And so I don't think that he's going to be a Quicksilver X-Men version. I think that he's some other character that's being manipulated through magic to appear as Pietro. But I think my hope is, my very loose theory that's more of just a hope, a personal wish, is that he is Mephisto. Just because I think he'd be an awesome villain, the actor. But I don't know. Well, I'm excited to see what happens. Bottom of the line, keep Evan Peters in the MCU because he's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, Harrison, you made a good point. Regardless of, we've seen this before where too soon can be a very bad thing for fans of this genre. We saw that with Spider-Man. As much as Spider-Man 3 was kind of ripped to shreds by fans, we certainly weren't ready for the story that we got. And I shouldn't say not ready, but fans certainly didn't want to see a rehash again of Spider-Man. Certainly the Amazing Spider-Man did better than Amazing Spider-Man 2 in terms of box office, but it was widely rejected overall. And I think there's several contributing factors to that. But, they do, I think, run the risk of maybe introducing the X-Men too soon. Again, my consensus is I liked more of the young cast X-Men movies than I didn't like. But, if you go on to a lot of review sites, the general consensus is they are not very good. People do not like them. I'm certainly on the one side of the fence about Apocalypse when the majority of people are on the other side where they don't like it and they don't think it's a good movie. So, they certainly have to be careful with how they're going to introduce the X-Men to make sure that they're a viable part of this franchise and they can branch them off, so to speak, because I think there's some challenges with the X-Men where you have to do mostly team-up movies with them. You can't really do a lot of solo projects. So, Harrison, I think you're absolutely right that it's going to take a little bit longer than maybe fans like us would want. But at the end, I think we've said it numerous times here that I trust what their plan is because, minus through a few missteps, which after 23 movies, you can forgive them. They have successfully paved this. There's nothing else in media like the MCU. You just don't have it. Nothing else has 23 movies and is still widely successful and still just literally tells people, give me your money. Don't think about it. Just hand it over. So I think we're in for a wild ride with it. But Rob, your thoughts on, like, before we get into a couple more things, because I got a couple questions. What are your final thoughts on this episode? Where does this rank for you?
So in terms of reels, I'm not somebody that is like, oh, nothing's ever a 5. You can't ever 10 out of 10. Nothing can ever be 5 out of 5. Like I don't like that idea that nothing can, like, you can have a lot of things that are a 5 out of 5 for you. And not only ever have to pick like one, like your personal Godfather 2 of TV shows is the only thing you can ever give a 5 to. Like, that's not my personal like rating system sort of idea, or sort of like the strategy that I use when I'm assigning things. As I think back to this, the things that I disliked were very minor. I kind of feel a little bit confused about the rules for the hex barrier, why some things can pass through and other things can't. It seems more based on what works for the plot than it does anything else. Outside of that, like, it's very nitpicky little stuff that I don't like about this episode. Like I said in kind of the open, we get some payoffs, but then we get so many more questions that we have, and so much more excitement builds, even as we're excited to see things resolved or see things kind of, okay, that's what that is. They give you more things to be excited about, seeing how they're going to pay it off. So to me, this is 5 out of 5 reels.
Harrison, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I give out 5 stars like they're pretzels. So, as terms of reels, 5 stars. Yeah. Besides those few moments that we really talked about, where I was like, "Why isn't this Reed Richards?" and "Who is this lady?" and those other things we talked about, everything I loved, and the way that was able to quickly move on from those things to a moment that probably my favorite moment in all of WandaVision's runtime so far has been Monica working through the hex barrier. That moment was awesome to see her get her powers. It was awesome in like the emotional aspect it had for Monica. Also, just the care that I have for the character of Monica. That was a great moment. And so just overall, I'd give it 5 reels because I thought it was great. And to just touch on one more thing that we've been talking about, as far as the continuity of the MCU and all these theories we have about the X-Men or not the X-Men or whatever, I think it's also great as the first MCU content we've had since Endgame. I know we had Spider-Man Far From Home, but I'm just going to say Phase 3 and Endgame in that story. I was really worried that after Endgame, it would be like you get in the comics, a cheap reset. That story's over, start over, blank slate type of thing, which is good in its own right and format, and when used properly, it's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with it, but I felt like it wouldn't work in the MCU, and the way that they've been tying in those stories, the snap, the unsnapping, the blip, Sword, Ultron, the X-Men, the multiverse, things reaching back to consequences from previous films, which I'm sure they're going to continue to do, and the way that it's going to move forward, I just think is awesome. And to see all that wrapped up perfectly in a TV show that drives me nuts when it says, please stand by because I want to watch another episode, just is a testament to how much I love it and how good it is.
Yeah, I am in 100% agreement with both of you. The minor things that I did not like about this episode, they're so easy to overlook because we get a great reveal at the end. The story is pushed forward. I'm on, high alert for what is going to happen. So for me, this is 5 reels as well. This episode just, again, further proves that these guys know what they're doing. And you guys have mentioned it, but one thing as I was watching this and then thinking about what I wanted to say during this review is WandaVision. Rob, you and I did a segment, Matt Goes to the Mailbox, where we talked about things that were coming up and all those huge announcements from Disney Plus and what was coming. You were excited for WandaVision. You were like, I'm very interested in the show. And I was like, yeah, it's going to be MCU content and things like that. But the feeling that I have from WandaVision reminds me very much of when the first Iron Man came out, because after so many months of not having MCU content with the delay of Black Widow and everything that's going on, you weren't really sure how this was going to be, especially because, you heard some, crazy things about what the show was going to be, and it was going to be in sitcom form. But I had the feeling that I had after Iron Man and really sitting and breaking down Iron Man all those years ago. I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago now when Iron Man first hit theaters.
Right.
But like seeing that and just breaking it down and going, wow, like this could work, because, up until then we didn't really have firm. We had X-Men. We certainly had Blade 1 that was for that time a box office success, but for everything like that, we had an Elektra, a Daredevil, Ghost Rider. We had the Fantastic Four movies that weren't, universally praised. And I sat there and saw Iron Man.
Or praised at all.
Right, exactly. But I sat there and went with Iron Man and went, wow, this could work. Who knows what we're going to see here? And I get that same feeling with WandaVision of, wow, how do you top Endgame and what we had there? And to me, it's, again, not about topping it. It's about, okay, can you tell a cohesive story and make it entertaining? And at the same time, to me, just kind of like shoot my brain in 100 different directions. And WandaVision has done that. It's amazingly crafted, great performances, but it makes me go, this outside the box idea that they have to really, again, go in a direction that no franchises have gone in with, how they're going to do the multiverse and all of these characters that they're going to introduce. This show makes me go, this could work. And I'm just super excited for it. That's
Matt,
my thought.
that I think was one of the things that I think you said that I just want to jump in on real quick. You compared the excitement of watching this show and where your brain goes with where this could turn into to going back to the original Iron Man. I think there's a lot of parallels between WandaVision and the first Iron Man film. If you think about how much of the MCU has been a gamble, there's a lot of them that have paid off spectacularly. So just even starting with Robert Downey Jr., he was not an A-list, can't miss celebrity. He was kind of controversial, and he was not necessarily a safe bet. There were films that would not get insured because he was attached to them. He had a lot of issues prior to when he became mega famous through the MCU. Obviously, he was a movie star and he'd been in a variety of other things, but he was not, the bankable megastar that he is to this day. And so starting with him was very much a gamble. Starting with your film franchise on a character of Iron Man, who was a C-list level character in Marvel Comics, not starting your franchise with somebody that everybody knew and universally loved. Iron Man was not that character pre-MCU. So you think about all of those things, that's a huge gamble. Now you think about the first show that you're actually starting your Disney Plus shows with. Matt, you've said it many times, Wanda and Vision were two characters that you just didn't really care about that much, throughout their appearances in the MCU. It was a little bit here, a little bit there. They're never really all that well developed. You don't really get a lot of screen time. They didn't really hit you. They didn't really make you feel anything. And then you find out that it's going to be this kind of trippy, crazy, multiverse level kind of show that's going to be based on sitcoms throughout TV history. And you go, wait, they're doing what? Like, it's just such a crazy gamble that has no reason to work except that it does. And I just think there's a lot of parallels between this series and the very first Iron Man.
Yeah. Harrison, any thoughts on that?
No, you guys said it very well. I could not say it better.
Yeah. So, I mean, God, I said it earlier, but it is Friday is almost too long.
I know it's not fair.
There's so much that I need to see. Now they have announced that this next episode is, the longest one. Certainly they said the last 3 episodes were going to be an hour each. So who knows how much more they're going to pack into this, into each episode and what we're going to get. But it certainly seems like there's going to be at least, kind of like we had with this episode, there's going to be one big payoff in every single episode that, okay, we get an answer on this, we get an answer on this. And then again, we've talked about it. I don't think this show wraps anything in a neat little bow, so to speak, certainly because we've talked about it branching into 2 other movies. But I think by the end of this, you get the idea of exactly how this leads into the other movies. Not to mention, we still have, a casting credit for James Spader. So where does he come into play? Because certainly we talked about Evan Peters, having a casting credit, and well, we haven't seen him. What does he have to do with this show? So it can't just be a coincidence that James Spader is credited. He has to have some sort of presence in this show. And we have to find out where are the kids, what has happened to them. So there's a lot going. So Rob, I will let you go with your final thoughts here on where you think maybe episode 8 is, or wait, 7, where that's going to take us.
We are so this one was episode 7.
Yes,
we're going to get
you're right.
episode 8 this coming Friday.
I guess I want more. I don't.
Right. It's going to take us for a ride. That's where it's going to take us. You have to wonder if this will be the first week that it's not based on a new decade of sitcoms. We've kind of run it up to, Modern Family / The Office. You kind of wonder what they're going to do with it next. Maybe we get a sitcom intro. Maybe we don't. Maybe we get kind of little throwbacks and nods to the television of an era. They kind of skipped over the 90s altogether, so maybe it goes back a decade or so. I don't know. But I think we're going to see what happens. We certainly know that Vision is out there trying to find out what's going on. Darcy is aware within the Hex and is trying to find out what's going on. It'll be interesting to see how much Monica has influence over this world's Pietro, for lack of anything else to call him. We'll just call him the Pietro of this world. I think I'd love to see it start with that post-credit scene, but I know that they won't. I know that will not be what we get. We might start next week outside the Hex and just make us go crazy. Like, no, that's not what I want. I want to see inside. I want to see what's going on there. Because there's all of these sort of things that are circling, that are trying to converge into one point. Certainly we have everybody on the outside with Sword, and we have kind of 2 different groups of Sword. We have the one that was helping Monica, and we have the one that's attached with the director, that are going to be, they probably have competing interests at this point. There's going to be some wild stuff happening Friday afternoon.
Yeah. Harrison, what are your final thoughts on where episode 8 takes us?
So I was quickly, while Rob was talking, writing down a list of all the things that were kind of like set up to have a payoff, hinted at, so to speak. There's 2 episodes left. There's episode 8 and there's episode 9, and then the series is over. And these are all the things that I could think of that are left to be resolved. There's Monica and kind of becoming Spectrum, and that interaction with Pietro that was teased in the end credits. There's Sword launching whatever director Hayward said they were launching that we didn't get to see. The twins are missing. There's a confrontation between Monica and I already mentioned that. There's a confrontation between Wanda and Agnes in Agnes's basement, and what could potentially be happening there. Then there's Vision and Darcy, and what are they going to do when they show up and they see that Wanda is being manipulated by Agnes. Then there's the engineer who may or may not be showing up. Then there's also something else that I thought was really awesome that I'll just mention really quickly is Nexus, which was the commercial, the antidepressant commercial. And I immediately recognized it, especially with like this one line. But so in the comics, maybe you guys know this, and I think Rob does because he mentioned it from Thor: The Dark World, is the nexus of all reality, which is pretty much just like there's kind of multiple definitions of what the nexus is in the comic. In essence, it's like a converging point of multiple realities, the multiverse, where those realities come together is a nexus point. And Wanda is a nexus being, meaning that she's the same individual in all realities, and she's kind of an anchor point where those realities come together and she has control over them. And I thought it was interesting that the antidepressant was called Nexus, and it's mentioned that it will help you feel your feelings more, it will confront your truth, seize your destiny, and possibly more depression, while also stating that you need it to anchor you to your reality or whatever reality you choose. But then the last line, which I'm getting to here, is it says, don't take Nexus until your doctor has cleared you to move on with your life. And I immediately thought of Doctor Strange and his involvement in a Nexus being, in a multiverse, especially leading into the multiverse of madness. So there's all these things I think is going to be happening. To quote what Rob said, craziness is going to happen on Friday. There's so much that's like, holy cannolis. How are we going to keep track of all of this? And it's just so exciting. You know, we got the Doctor Strange coming in to prescribe Wanda whatever she needs to handle this Nexus reality. You know, Monica and Pietro potentially being hinted at being Mephisto, which is what I'm dreaming of, a sword launcher, whatever they are, the twins missing, and potentially never coming back. Vision and Darcy, what's going to happen with them? The engineer, like, oh my gosh, there's so much. I don't know. I'm so excited. Can it just be Friday already?
Yeah.
Well, we keep hearing that there's a Luke Skywalker level cameo that still hasn't shown up yet. Like, we keep hearing that, and we keep hearing that Evan. That's what I'm wondering.
Well, I was also going to say this. This is one detail that I thought was super awesome. So the aspect ratio change has been like one of the coolest things of the entire season, especially how it changes from the sitcom to reality. And I noticed on my rewatch, when Wanda walks down into the basement at Agnes's house, the aspect ratio shifts and the black bars come in, and you get the aspect ratio that has been representative of reality. And so that confrontation she had with Agatha Harkness is reality and not the sitcom WandaVision. And same with Monica's interaction with Pietro. So clearly the boundaries of the sitcom, the rules of it are being split open. And I think that nexus, so to speak, just to use that buzzword I brought up earlier, is going to happen. And maybe we'll get the Mandalorian season 2 level cameo, and Doctor Strange will show up, and I'll have a heyday if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that would be, definitely on par with, Luke just showing up in The Mandalorian. And it's somebody who Paul Bettany has said he has not had the pleasure of working with in the MCU. He has come out and stated they have never shared a scene together in the MCU. So,
really?
Yeah, there's certainly some options there overall. But yeah, he has said that, it's funny if you actually go see any of those interviews, and maybe, who knows, maybe he's doing it to throw people off or whatever, but he seems genuinely excited about what people are going to see and what they produced when he talks about it. There's like giddiness in his voice, which makes me even more of a fan because he just seems like a fan.
You're getting me all excited, and it's only Monday.
So yeah, there's a lot going on. It'll certainly be interesting to see. So, I think that's the perfect spot to end it on for this, this week's edition of WandaVision and Mondays with Maximoff, because boy, I could go on for another 2-3 hours about everything going on, but
seriously,
yeah. Again, listeners, I think this might be my favorite episode yet that we've done of WandaVision. There's just so much happening, and I've had a blast doing this. I'll say the same thing I always say Rob, Harrison, thank you guys so much, because this is so much fun doing this. Again, I wish we didn't have to wait until a following Monday to talk about this next episode, but boy, it's been exciting. And I honestly, I can't thank you guys enough for doing this. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this really is a blast.
Yeah, and listeners, as always, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back next week with another episode. All of the notes for the Basement Binge are going to be inside the show notes, and we look forward to coming back next week. And thank you. The downloads are certainly adding up for WandaVision, so we really appreciate the listens, and thank you so much. And we'll see you next week for another edition of Mondays with Maximoff.